Welcome back to the shop and part 2 of Project Quicksilver. That is John's 2008 328 6-speed. Today we're going to be jumping right in and we're going to start at the top and work our way down with a valve cover that we got as part of the negotiated deal with the old owner, the spark plug tubes. Let's see, we got an oil filter housing. We ordered a Valvetronic eccentric shaft sensor. It came with this PCV valve. We're gonna do or start our power steering flush and replace our reservoir with a new filter inside. And you might be asking, well, why are you gonna replace the valve cover? Well, for 2 reasons. 1, it came with it, and 2, it came with it. Yeah, that's basically it. The other thing that you should probably know about the valve cover is the PCV valve is built into it. This car has more than 150,000 miles. And with mileage, PCVs do tend to fail, and they'll start sucking in additional oil, you'll burn oil, and you'll have extra carbon deposits and all sorts of things going on inside. You see your PCV line connects right here down through this Y to the intake manifold. The actual valve is right here, and that flows through these chambers in the valve cover to the bottom here into the cylinder head. And that's where everything goes wrong. See, these guys will plug up with debris over time. This guy, the little rubber valve inside, will rip and it'll cause vacuum leaks and all sorts of issues. So we're gonna get this guy off, pull it apart, see if it's any good. Regardless, we're gonna replace it. Now, you could have 2 different valve covers on this engine. There's the N52 and the N52K. The N52, well, there's also the N51. But 2 most prevalent motors outside of emissions California are the N52 and N52K. The easy way to check which one you have is using your oil fill cap. Underneath the cap, you should be able to access the valve cover. You can see our valve cover is plastic. That means we should have the N52K. If your valve cover opening here is magnesium, that means you have the N52, which uses a different valve cover. This one being the plastic one, we should be solid and good to go. So let's get going on taking this thing apart. John's gonna be pulling the valve cover while I'm trying to get to the PCV line, and Judah is playing in the background with I don't know what.
Just trying to put it back on.
Trying to put it back on. It's literally coming off of the car.
Yeah, bro, what the heck?
But thanks for the help, little dude. All right, either way, let's get into this project.
First thing we're doing, we got a 10mm, we're gonna disconnect the battery.
So the reason we disconnected the battery is because we're gonna have to disconnect all kinds of sensors and whatnot up front here. Plus, it's just a good idea whenever you start taking things apart to any significant amount, disconnect the battery, just keep yourself safe. I already started pulling the front end apart up here. Now we just gotta get our harness off. The bottom, this already came off because it's broken, which is pretty common for these guys. You had 8 mils on both sides. You've got your fart sensor over here in the corner. Just pop that off and then slide this guy out.
Comes out. And
we can
there's
clean
that terrible
this up.
seal.
Get our air filter out. Just separate the 2 halves. And this does have the emissions filter in it still. Actually looks kind of gummed up. That might be something that we address while we're here. Take this out. And this is the factory filter. Doesn't look terrible. Let's see if there's a date on here. 21/07/12. I wonder if that's 2021. I'm gonna say it's time for an air filter too.
Like that.
It's not even the right size. With the cover coming off, a ton of dirt under there, it was time to really get cracking into this thing. We had just washed the engine bay the day before, and as soon as we pulled this cover off, we noticed all sorts of beautiful colors of liquid underneath the valve cover near and around the coils. I'm guessing a lot of what that was the previous owner going to the car wash and not having the cowling on there correct. So we got all that sucked out of there, pulled the coils out, and started getting everything disconnected. What you just saw there a moment ago was me releasing the injector harness. We like to spray a little WD-40 on each one of those plugs, wiggle them around a little bit, and then pry them off with a pry bar. They'll come off pretty easy. Then it was time to start pulling off all the little connectors and get that valve cover unbolted. get the PCV line off of the back. Hitting the surface here. We want to keep that surface nice and clean. You gotta really give it some beans.
I really did not want to break that.
Yeah, you're not gonna break anything. Well, eventually we got the valve cover off. It was a bit tighter than I'm used to with my X5, so we did wind up pulling the harnesses up out of this corner to get more room and to fight around the AC line. But man, as you can tell inside here, this engine is really clean and well maintained. There is zero varnish buildup at all, anywhere. Like even this big cast piece here, this bridge, nothing. And the camshafts look bright, shiny silver. We're pretty happy with this. The valve cover itself, you can see some corrosion down inside here, and there was a whole bunch of oil built up in each one of these ports, from leaking from the Valvetronic unit here and from the top of the oil filter, or not the oil filter, the oil fill cap there. We're pretty sure that this is a 2011 based on the date code that we're reading here on these gaskets. So at some point this engine's been opened up, but it's been a long time since the last time somebody's been in here. So before we started pulling the manifold, or I keep calling this the manifold, the valve cover off, we talked about the PCV system being integrated. Well, I got the valve cover off, and laying down in between the cams was this bottom little nozzle here with a valve in it. This is part of your PCV system on both sides that filters up to the top. So right away, we already know that we had some PCV problems with this car, though we didn't have any engine faults. So this is a great piece of maintenance to just replace this valve cover, get it done. That spark plug is pretty fouled, actually. You see all the carbon fouling here. This is probably from oil.
You can look in the cylinders while we have it out.
Yeah, we'll stick a camera down in the cylinder, see what we're dealing with as well. Well, it looks like there's a fair bit of carbon buildup inside this engine. Cylinder walls don't look bad. This is an alusil block, so it doesn't have hone. It's just reflection there. Let's spin around and see if we can see anything. I see nothing but reflection. I do see nice, clean cylinder walls, so that's good. How about if we go all the way up to the valves?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a fair bit of carbon buildup in here. I think giving an injection flush a shot could be worthwhile, just to see if we can break some of this up. Another good piece of maintenance while you've got the valve cover off is to replace your eccentric shaft sensor. This is a Euro sensor that we picked up for just under $100. It's right there in front of you, and the only way to get to it is with the valve cover off. It has these 3 captive 10mm bolts that if you screw too far, they will come out. So you don't want to do that. You just want to get them loose and then slide our sensor out. Conversely, if you were doing a timing job, it'd be a really great time to get to it. Everything would be right there. While you're looking in the front of the motor, double check that the front head studs and the one right behind your timing guide aren't broken. And then the one right here at the top of the oil filter housing in the cylinder head, that it's not broken. These are common failure points on this engine and something to look out for. So you have to drive the screws back in.
Sounded like it went down there.
Well, we're gonna have to find that one. Oh dear. Okay.
Hey!
Well, that's a heart-stopping moment right there. And that's why this is here's what we're doing, not exactly how to do it. Now, we did mention that these bolts can fall out, and you don't want to unscrew them too, well, if you unscrew them too far, this happens. Thankfully, it was the top bolt. It fell this way, got stuck under the exhaust cam, and didn't go down into the oil pan. Though we are going to be pulling the oil pan off anyhow, it's best to make sure you have all of your bolts.
Whew, that was fear.
The torque on these is 10 Newton meters, or a short wrench, and about that far. Because unless you pull this front timing guide off, you're not going to put a torque wrench on here. we go. This actually looks to be in good shape. Well, let's see. No, there's a tear right there. See, the valve was already torn. So this was already not functioning properly.
So good that we're replacing it.
Yeah, so all of this debris is indicative of what was happening there, is the oil was escaping past, the vacuum was escaping past. So this is going to be one of those little things, again, good, super simple, cheap maintenance. You get the PCV valve with your new cover, you get the new gaskets with it, everything goes together nicely, and you're good to go for another 60,000 miles. So a couple of things going back together with the valve cover. We fought this for a little while for a couple of reasons. One, there's not a whole lot of room in that back corner. Two, this beauty cover bracket in the back corner, it sits back here, definitely gets in the way. So we removed ours, we'll put it back in so that we can screw the beauty cover on and keep everything nice and clean and no water inside of the top of our valve cover like what we found with the old one. Next step, we're going to be pulling the intake manifold to replace our PCV line in the back, and it'll make it much easier to get to the oil filter housing and gasket. Down underneath here, you've got the main harness bracket underneath the throttle body. I like to shoot a bunch of WD-40 on here and then use a pry bar right here to peel it back. This is one area that having a magnetic socket is really nice so that you can get in here and not drop your bolts down into the valley. See here, they just pop right off. We didn't film getting the intake manifold off, but clearly you can see it's off. That's going to get us great access to this rear bolt on the oil filter housing. But before we do that, we want to go ahead and pull our belt off because this is definitely going to leak oil down the front face here. And this is a newer belt on this vehicle. We do not want to cover that in oil. We're also going to be pulling the cap to get this nice and loose, get all the oil drained down, empty it out, again, to stop as much oil from draining as possible. We're also going to be draining the cooling system because we are going to be replacing the water pump and thermostat, which is hiding way down there in that corner.
Way easier than that Jeep. Get this up there. Well, we got some weird string, but we'll bring you all over here, get you in close. The oil itself doesn't look bad, like it's a little dark, which I think is good, but there's no like shiny stuff in it. So this was here before, so we're not going to talk about that. But the oil has no shining in it. It's kind of red. I don't know how well y'all can see that, but no metal. It's good. So here's something unique. This bolt, somebody cut the top of it. It was covered in, don't get oil on the camera. Yeah, I saw that.
It was covered in Teflon tape. This does not go in this. This is a BMW oil pan bolt that would have fit. And it's a 17 head versus a 16 head. Neither one of these want a thread in there, which means as we pull the bolt or the pan off, we'll see if it's stripped or damaged or what.
And there was...
Or if there's been a thread insert. Somebody glued on the old crush washer. So yeah.
Bad things all around.
More fun things. To make doing the water pump much easier, we're going to be draining the coolant from the radiator here. We've got a drain. So John's just going to unscrew that center plug. We've got a pan waiting. Yep. So it's going to burble because
We don't have anything open.
we don't have anything open. Yeah. Man, that is wicked fresh coolant.
Yeah.
Because this coolant looks so damn good, we're going to go ahead and catch it in a bottle and keep it as emergency coolant.
Hashtag cheap life.
Hashtag cheap, that's right. Now we can attack those 3 bolts with a nice clean housing. We've got our bolt here, here, and that one down below that's underneath the Mickey Mouse fitting. Yeah, and we didn't leak a ton of oil out of the bottom here because we emptied it out and we drained our coolant, so we're not draining coolant everywhere either.
And we're replacing those bolts too.
Nope.
I thought we was.
Nope, they're not aluminum.
Oh.
So now what we'll do is we'll clean up that side, this side, replace our gasket, torque it back down. I think you just hit it.
I did.
Yeah.
That was easy. Never mind. Rough. It's so little torque. I thought it was slipping.
Don't try to extra push. There you go. You go to the push.
All right, so now that we keep calling it the oil cooler, it's the oil filter housing. Now that we got that done, we got everything open. That means it's time to do all the other while you're in theirs. So we are going to get started on dropping the subframe so we can do the oil pan.
Like John said, we're starting up top with all this room for activities. We're going to get the steering shaft disconnected from the rack. We're going to be pulling the rack out as well to see if our universal O-ring kit can fix up the leaks coming from the bottom. So the other thing we need to do from the top is pull our motor mount bolts from the top. Motor mounts have been replaced clearly, which is nice. And then we'll throw our engine brace across the top to hold everything in place. Okay, we've got our motor mounts disconnected, which means we can lift, put a little bit of tension on the top. Otherwise, what's going to happen is when we drop everything down below, we'll have to lift it up to get it back in place. When you run into an issue like this, you should probably get the proper tools out in the first place. In this case, I've got a through socket with a T40 that goes on the inside so that I can lock the stud and keep it from spinning. Now, this guy is a little bit jacked up, so what I'm going to do is give it a little bit of persuasion to go in there so that I don't slip. Use our through socket. And this would be even more important if you were trying to save these. But now I can just break this free without spinning the shaft. And this specifically is why we have new control arms, because these bushings are totally shot. They're not supposed to bend like that. This shouldn't rotate on itself at all.
There's not supposed to be a hole in either.
No, these are not spherical bearings. These are bushings, which means there should have been tension, counter tension pushing up like that. That's toast. These end-link ball joints don't look great either.
Did you get those?
No.
Always want to put the glasses on. If your glasses aren't on, you're doing it wrong.
Oh, this is a perfect use for this little pocket. Never thought of that.
Just don't have your phone in there and crack the screen.
Yeah, that'd be terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does not come out. Because that thing.
Yeah, the only way to get it out is to force it up. The WD-40 really lets it slide a lot better without damaging potential to the boot.
That boot looks pretty toast.
Yeah, this guy is way past toast here.
Yeah.
Your suspension is gonna feel
Amazing.
so good.
To be able to take that bump turning in at actual 20 miles an hour.
Oh man, the whole shaft has slid over. It's supposed to be about right here.
Ooh.
So yeah, your alignment's gonna get better. Ball joint was in good shape, but that guy's not good.
No. Well, that went too far.
Broke 3 windshields.
That went way too.
There you go, one-handed pull. Yeah. All right, with the subframe out of the car, this Man, this is gonna be gravy to do this oil pan. Trying to do the oil pan on my X5, being an all-wheel drive, whew, that was a lot of work. And we've got all the control arms and everything off of here. The water pump, we have a new water pump and a new thermostat. This is ballooned into such a gigantic while you're in there project. We've got the power steering lines blocked off with some silicone little condoms there. Teenager would laugh. We're gonna pull our rack apart and see if we can't figure out what size these O-rings are right here, because they were dripping just a little bit. The rest of this is all, I don't know what this is, from other stuff, and me spraying it with WD-40 to get it off of the shaft. So our next step is to break each one of these bolts free on the oil pan to make sure that we don't break them with an impact gun. Then we can unscrew all of them and get it down.
Loose, not out. I should have done this one first. That way I could grab it from the clean side.
Yeah, you're gonna want to grab it from this side anyhow. You just have more room.
Oh, it's throwing gunk. Oh, it got oil on me.
Yeah, it's dripping off the back. Back up. All the oil is starting to drip out of this back corner.
It's just falling out.
All right, go ahead and pull the bottom screw. Leave the top screw since it hasn't dropped yet.
Be ready.
We're not really sure if on the manual transmission, if you have to pull the transmission bolts out or just the pan bolts.
Look at the gunk built up on these bolts. They were on all of the ones on the bottom. It's
yeah,
gross.
there's a lot of debris under there.
Debris.
All right, give her some wiggles. Yep, there it is. Dude, that's so much easier. So take your time. There you go. Now on the front, take your time dropping around that. That's your oil pump.
What am I stuck on?
The oil pump.
Oh.
So you have to, nope, don't tilt. Come down in the front. Stop tilting. Come down straight. You're on the oil pump and you're on this line right here. There you go. There we go.
We definitely had some oil down there.
Hands down.
And I hit the other camera.
Okay.
We got the pan though.
Yeah, let's dump the oil into the bucket. And
bucket?
I wouldn't stand under the engine that's going to drip on your head. Do you see the white chalky goo on these bolts? That's called a micro-encapsulated bolt. It's somewhat of a sealant, somewhat of a Loctite, which means that each one of these bolt holes needs to be cleaned out before you put new bolts in. And for that, we're using an 8x125 chase. This is not a cutter, this is a chase, just to clean out the flutes inside those bolts. So what we're doing is we're going around and putting our initial torque, 8 Newton meters on these, and then we're marking them with a white pen. Then we're going to come back afterwards and we'll mark them with a green pen after putting our 90 degrees of torque on it. This is one of those areas where taking your time is going to help ensure a leak-free operation for years to come until your new gasket leaks in the future. Got our new water pump in, got our new hose on. We're currently torquing our 3 bolts. These go to 10 Newton meters and then 90 degrees. We're gonna mark them just like we did the oil pan with our green marker so that both we know that they're done and somebody in the future will hopefully believe they're done. While we've got the subframe out, we're going to be replacing this lower ground strap. You can see here, these like to get green and crunchy, and what will eventually happen is as they build up with corrosion, they'll start to crack and break. Replacing this is a fantastic preventative maintenance. to keep from all sorts of other odd running issues that you would normally have on your BMW.
That's why you have soft hammers. Right about.
And then stick this hand in here to push up. Then you're counter holding. I don't know, push
You're
up
not
on here.
sticking.
No, I'm not sticking.
You gotta get on the socket, push your thumb up here, or your finger or something. Because it doesn't take a lot of torque to counter hold. So these lower control arms aren't all that difficult to replace, but they are difficult to do properly. You see, the bushing is torqued here, and it's supposed to be torqued at ride height, which means if right now I went and I torqued this lower bolt, as soon as we lowered the car, this would go up and there would be twisting tension on the ball joint, or the bushing, not the ball joint, inside here. Which means that over time, as it's going like this down the road, it's going to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze and eventually tear just like this one. Now, I'm not saying that's how this one tore, but what it will do is it will accelerate how fast these are gonna wear. The thrust arms or the tension strut, same thing. This bushing inside here needs to be torqued with it up at ride height. So to do this at home, you can do it a couple ways. If you're fortunate enough and you have a lift, you can do it with a pull jack. I've made an adapter on this side to mount to my hub so that I can jack up this corner of the car so that it lifts off of my lift, simulating ride height. The best way to do this would be to do it on a flat surface such as a 4-post lift up in the air. I don't have that. You might. That would be great. You could use a jack underneath the ball joint here with a piece of wood to protect it, or a jack right here to lift it up. Either way, do whatever you can not to bolt these in and torque them down here drooped out. Make sure that they're up at the right height position. So now what I can come do is I can come and torque these. These are 68 Newton meters and then 90 degrees.
This one at least.
Yeah.
These two bolts are. So 68 right there. So 68, and then we're gonna go 90 degrees. Definitely do this at home, because if you don't, you're gonna wind up wearing your bushings way faster than they need to be. And your torque is gonna vary a little bit on these. There's two different torque specs, whether you have the 8.8 or the 10.9 bolts. Double check in your repair instructions. If you don't have repair instructions, see my link down below to eManual Online. That's where you'll find them.
A little more. 62. There we go.
Well, she's got oil in it. We got the belt on. The intake needs to go on next. And then we have to get the rest of this harness together. So while I'm stabbing the intake, we've already got new seals on there. John is going to be cutting out the carbon filter here because it's original. It's got some degradation to it. When you do that, it's full of dust and debris. So we're going to go ahead and just cut that out, and then maybe later he'll go big boy style and get a cold air intake, but probably not till he upgrades to a 335.
No, not till the 335.
We've got everything put back together. There's oil, there's coolant, there's power steering fluid in it. Before we can start it, we've got to bleed everything. So the first thing we'll do is we're hooking up a battery charger so that we can activate the water pump and get the cooling system to bleed before we start it. Then we're going to disable the fuel system either by unplugging the fuel pump or by pulling the fuel pump relay or the fuel pump fuse. We'll crank it until we get oil pressure, and then we'll crank it, we'll fire it up, and probably shut it down pretty quick to top off the power steering fluid because it'll all get sucked down through the pump. When I do a really big job like this, I like to leave a note on the steering wheel. I got to do the Valvetronic relearn, prime the oil, bleed the cooling system, and double check that I put all my ground wires back on that we were replacing. This is a surefire way to make sure you or somebody else doesn't jump in the car and fire it up when that would be a really bad idea. To activate the water pump, we got to put the key in, turn the ignition on, turn the heat all the way up. Then we're going to hold our foot on the gas pedal for 10 seconds, and we'll hear it eventually turn on. There it goes.
Turn
So you can hear it gurgling and fluid running through there already. So now we can top off our coolant as it's bleeding. That was it. So under normal circumstances, I'd be looking for the little oil symbol or something of that nature. And what I want is I want to crank the car until the oil symbol goes away or you see oil pressure build up. But because these cars are just dummy gauges and there's nothing here, we're going to crank it for 10 seconds, let the car rest. Then we'll crank it for 10 seconds again. I'll probably let it rest a minute or so. That way the starter doesn't get too overworked. Must have been fuel in the system.
Yeah.
So I'll let that sit for a minute. We'll do this 2 more times, and then we'll put the fuse back in and start it. That was the power steering. It's full of air. Fired up real nice.
Well, I did turn the right one.
You did get the right fuse. Good job.
It also didn't do its normal long start.
Yeah, it did start up a lot faster.
Right.
I'm wondering if the PCV was letting a ton of oil in there, causing a harder start. That's where we were getting a little bit of smoke. Well, this job has quickly gone over the top from changing the valve cover to quite a bit more. We've now addressed all of the fluids in the engine bay except the brake fluid and clutch fluid here. I checked it earlier and it was reading above max on my brake fluid test gauge, which is not good. That tells me that the color was accurate to the content of the water or contamination in the fluid. So we're going to address that in this video before we move underneath into the next video. And then we'll have all the fluids, all the leaks, everything addressed under the hood. So first thing we got to do is we need to get our brake fluid flush adapter and pressure capsule mounted up on the reservoir. So we're going to start on our furthest wheel, the right rear wheel, and we're going to let this drain until it starts to drain out clear or clear-ish. The fluid we put in there has a light yellow hue.
As we get closer to that,
It's definitely not clear yellow.
as we get closer to that tire, it's going to start being better color probably.
How open? Then go ahead and twist the hose 1 revolution.
Yep, it's bubbling. We just went around and did all of the brakes. We're looking like it's pretty disgusting. So now we're gonna...
This algae pond is what it looks like when you miss your brake fluid intervals.
Just a few times.
Brake fluid, air filter, carbon filter gone, oil filter, oil change, valve cover, water pump, oil pan, gasket, coolant change, temp thermostat. I'm starting to run out of things that we did. We did a whole bunch of stuff in this video. So if you could do us a huge favor, could you hit the like and subscribe button down below and drop us a comment? What kind of work have you done on your car lately? Or perhaps have you had somebody do to your car lately? I know we don't all work on our own cars. In fact, that's why I'm trying to teach my boys exactly how to do it themselves so that they have that skill. We're going to cut this video here because we've got another big round of work to do underneath. We're going to be changing out all the shift bushings, the carrier housing and everything there. We've got some leaks on the trans, leaks on the rear end. And then this thing,
It's going to be ready to go.
it should be ready to go.
Yeah.
Well before he actually gets his license, but we'll get lots of practice in before then. So, like I said, like, subscribe, comment. If you're looking for a manual for your car, e-manual online, hit my link down below, DFB22 for 22% off. Thanks again for watching. We really appreciate it. If you buy anything from the links in this video, this guy is going to earn the commission to work on his car. He didn't know that.
I did not know that.
Thanks again. We'll see you in the next
Click
one.
on my links. I get money too.